All right, so how's everybody doing? We got Hey Molombo here talking about capitalism and communism going from across the spectrum. He's going to go from the far right to the far left. So we're going to start on the far right, what a far right person would say about capitalism, then the center right, or far right, center left, far left. In that order, I'm pretty sure. And he's just going to change character each time. And without further ado, Hey Molombo.
What's capitalism? Questions like that sound Chinese, because our problem isn't the fact that we don't know what capitalism is, it's the fact that we don't know what a demagogue is. But given the cheap, overheated, divisive rhetoric being sprayed out by the leading Democrats with all the attentiveness of a skunk with chronic incontinence, we haven't realized that we haven't tried true capitalism yet. Communist presidents keep getting elected, so we have this half capitalist, half communist shit show. We just need more conservatives to be president. Then we can have true capitalism. Then everything will be just fine. Capitalism is simply the most efficient way to run an economy. It's a network of individuals all meeting the dynamic needs of a market, while boosting their own market value, contesting against their rivals. Individual initiative, not government rules, determines what wins in capitalism. Sure, some people fail, but a lot of people win. Exchange of goods simply invites innovation. Everything you know and love has been brought in by an investor. Unequal distribution of goods? Common misconception. That's not capitalism, it's nature. Talented individuals and highly intelligent people attract success. And when you have success, you get more success. I'm not saying I like it, it's simply nature. Capitalism is freedom. Capitalism frees the slaves. You have the freedom not to live in some $1,200 bedroom apartment. You can simply move to a cheaper one that doesn't exist. You can shop anywhere, work anywhere. Regular citizens are able to own their own businesses as opposed to only the government being able to do all that. How could you ever be coerced in such a rich, free environment where the individual is the primary person of concern, whereas the government is a foreign entity that we have no control over, and anything it does is obviously not based off consent. But
one, the government should not be a foreign entity. It is our government.
Thanks to capitalism, we have no social questions to answer, except for war. The definition of capitalism is an economic system where the prices for goods and services are set freely by the market of supply and demand, where they're allowed to reach their point of equilibrium without government policy. Notice how that definition didn't have the words colonizer or imperialism in it, because the problem is people. If implemented correctly, any of these systems can work out great, and to be honest,
see, that's what a centrist would say. Basically, just read the definition and say any of these systems could work. I don't believe capitalism can work without slavery. That's just my belief. We've had slaves all throughout every monarchy, every oligarchy. They don't care about the people. Capitalism is just the same system, changing words, right? We got the 13th Amendment where we now put slaves in jail, and we just work slave labor now, right? Our minimum wage is so low that you can't even pay rent and eat and have a little bit of a family, right? Like, that's less than slaves got. Not saying that slavery was good, right? But slaves got to have a family, a house, and food. Nowadays, it's hard to have a house and food. We got how many homeless people we got? But I digress.
Capitalism has given us so many benefits. Yeah, a couple of headaches, but you can't just blame capitalism. Some people are just not happy with what they have. What we really need is a robust system of checks and balances. Obviously, the system that got us into space first is the best one. Capitalism has always existed in one form or another, so defining it can be pretty difficult. But in short, human beings need sticks and carrots to stay motivated. I know that has a metric tons of faults.
See, I don't believe that either. People are already motivated. I work with kids a lot, right? And if you just ask a kid to do something, they'll do it. And if you don't ask a kid to do something, they just do stuff, right? They'll go draw, they'll go color, they'll go play. Like, my kids love to go play football, right? You got a football out there, they're just going to be throwing the football around. You got the kids, like, I work at a school, so they like to play basketball, football, volleyball. They just get to go play, right? If you tell them to do some stuff, if you start moving chairs or you start, like, working, doing a little bit, oh, mister, can I help you? Everybody wants to do stuff. I think it's so crazy that they say that it takes money to motivate people. It does not.
But to play devil's advocate, capitalism has brought us more progress in the modern world more than anything else. The real problem is that we have too much capitalism. We just need to mix it with a little bit of socialism, then capitalism will be fine. I don't see any other alternative. Paywalls. That's all it is. Capitalism is paywalls. Paywalls for food, paywalls for shelter, paywalls for medicine.
And I definitely sound more like a left to far left type of person, so
that if you can't afford, you die. So what's the best way to win? Well, what's the easiest way to make money? If you have money. Who has the most money? The person with the most amount of money. It's a system where your fate is determined by people who are born into success or who are the best at cheating you out of it. Capitalism doesn't create wealth, it sucks it from the earth, sky, and hope. But I guess we're running out of that too. Capitalism is the word we use to describe the global system as it exists and all its consequences. Social malaise, environmental destruction, classism, and economic inequality are all part of the system that we are a part of called capitalism. When you study it as a science, you can see the glaring flaws. Imagine if it was magically implemented where everyone had an equal playing field. Well, due to some sheer luck in town, some entrepreneurs do better than others. Those others vanish, winners get bigger, their liquidated assets of the losers get picked up by the competition, rinse repeat, a monopoly is formed. Oh, what's that? Strong laws will stop that? Well, here's the thing. Businesses exist for one thing, to make money. So those laws are in the way of generating profit. So they will be lobbied to be changed. This always happens. And if there are laws to stop that, those will be changed as well. Capitalism will always monopolize. It will follow the laws of overworking you, eating your salary, and kicking you out in the street every 10 years or so. That is the rules of the dictatorship of the rich, aka the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie, aka capitalism.
All right, so now we're going to do the same thing with communism. He's going to go from across the spectrum from far right to far left.
What's communism? Well, it's a synonym for 200 million people starving to death, a totalitarian Democrat's dreamy ideal of an authoritarian heterosexual death machine that stands against everything the American system's about. Freedom, personal wealth, and freedom. Say goodbye to your personal property, because under communism, it'd be legal for a transient to sleep with your wife. California is communist, now it's legal to cut off pickles with a scalpel. If you believe in God and you look around, you can tell that he's a capitalist too. He owns the earth, the sky, the entire universe. If God was a Marxist-Leninist hypocrite, yeah, there would have been a big bang, but it would have been aimed at us. The only thing worse than a Nazi is a communism is the ideal ideology for losers. The basic concept, the janitor and CEO get the same pay and benefits. It sacrifices the individual. You see, under capitalism, if you work hard, you will make more money. So the concept of pure communism or working hard means nothing at all.
And so we know that's not true. But one, communism, we don't want the janitor and the CEO to make the same amount. But a CEO shouldn't make 1,000 times what the janitor makes.
All shows its inherent flaws. What happens if you don't
Oh yeah, and then the harder you work, the more money you make. That's obviously not true either.
have enough volunteers for street cleaner, or maybe the baker doesn't want to keep making that same plain boring bread every day? What do? Here's where we're back to external motivation and the end of that communism debate. It's a horrible, sick system where the state leaders must always repress individual thought and action. But thankfully, its GDP sucks so much that its death is certain. And like we've been saying since the 60s, communism will fail any day now. And we have plenty of money to make sure that it will. It's the end of progress, and in practice, it's slavery with extra steps. Communism is when a small group of elites keep
And see, to me, capitalism is slavery with extra steps.
everybody else in poverty know their way of moving forward, because everybody makes the exact same. Communism is when a small group of elites keep everybody else in poverty know their way of moving forward, because
A small group of elites keep everybody in poverty with no way of moving forward. What does that sound like? Who got shot for doing something like that just recently? I'm not saying to do that, but somebody just got shot because of something similar to what he just described.
everybody makes the exact same. You don't compete so much more that you're assessed at age 13 for your future occupation. And if it involves responsibility, prepare to be monitored, bugged, and photographed. And if you're a
And then, speaking of that, monitored, bugged, and photographed, they weren't even trying to follow this guy, but they could find him all over the city because the city's that monitored and bugged already under the capitalist regime.
intellectual, your days are numbered. Basically, your life is not your own. Communism is essentially just a new spin on monarchies, except new royals who make up this nepotistic regime. If that sounds good to you, then why don't you go live there? I'll take the worst of capitalism than the best of that communism. The definition of communism is a classless, moneyless, stateless envisioning of society where the means of production is owned by everyone. The key word here is envisioning, because communism only works on paper. It's well-meaning, but fails to acknowledge human nature. People are just greedy. Effort versus reward is what everyone considers. So if 1% of the work versus 99% of the work is the same reward, most people will do the bare minimum. However, it may be possible if all our needs were filled. So could it happen? Well, it would be organic, not through the anti-wealthy laws that the radical left wants to implement. It would happen naturally without government intervention, or it won't happen at all. I personally lean towards the latter, so it's Star Trek until I see otherwise. There's quite a few different styles of communism, but basically, 100% communism is when there's no government anymore and the means of production is owned by everyone.
So I don't think that there's ever going to be no government. I've talked to a lot of libertarians, and so they brought me to that point because every time I say that we want to work together and we want, like, say, across the world, we want your workers to unite, right? We want to work together. And they're like, oh, that's government, that's government. So I think we need to change either what we think of as government, or we're going to change what the government is when we have communism to a different style of thing. But basically, if you work together over a large enough land mass, libertarians tell me that that's government. So then, if just working together is government, then I don't think government can go away if we're going to be communists, because communism is all about working together, right? And so libertarians they want to kind of have their own little land and be separate from other people. Not all of them, but some of them, right? And so that's fine in communism too. You can be separate from other people, but you still got to kind of report what you're doing on your land, because you can't just be dumping oil on your land or burning stuff on your land that'll mess up other people's lands around you, right? So it's just being aware of what's around, and we're one world, so we need to. China needs to act like we're here. We need to act like China's there, right? You know, same with Russia, Cuba, everybody that's on a large scale or any scale. We need to act like other people are around.
Therefore, the USSR, China, Cuba, all the rest of them aren't real communist states. There's never been a proper communist state, because in reality, to have good things, you must also have bad things, and never question that. I, for one, love the theories of utopias where everyone has equal power, but the existence of utopias are just impossible because someone or some group will always suffer. I don't understand why people try to think that communism is any better than.
Well, and even if someone does suffer a little bit under communism, if you suffer if less people suffer less, that's better, right? Like, people suffer real bad under capitalism. There's all these homeless people and people, like, so I don't know how, like, the whole healthcare thing, right? All these people are dying for not, they're even paying their healthcare and just getting denied. But then if you look at the world starvation rate, people die at quite high rates around the world, and the United States throws away enough food to feed the entire world.
Fascism, when in reality, it's shown itself to be just as bad. Cards Against Humanity said it best. Awesome in theory, but just a mess in practice. Anybody who defends those so-called communist countries are just tankies with an authoritarian boner. They don't represent all us lefties, obviously. On paper, it works great, but in reality, communist countries always have to seem like they're failing, don't exist at all, or the feds would be out of a job. Everyone hates it without understanding it. They hate it because they've been told they hate it. They hate it because they watch too much TV and never think to question authority. Everyone agrees with the details, but as soon as you say the C word, you spit on their deeply ingrained American dream of exploiting another American. It's crazy to me how many people think it's unsustainable for an EMT worker, a fast food worker, to have a livable wage, but it's okay for 5 people to have $400 billion. What would it look like in great details? Well, my boss took a trip to Cuba for health reasons, and my grandpa retired to Vietnam with full benefits. We don't have either of those things in America, but we're so propagandized that we'll call that capitalism. All I know is that the USSR, China, Cuba, and Vietnam gave political asylum to Black Panthers. America gave it to Nazis. Let's go. Communism is the word we use to describe the revolutionary movement to create a society where the socioeconomic basis defines a new reality where there's no longer exploitation of humans by other humans and without social inequality. This doesn't come out of nowhere. Communism doesn't fall out of the sky. So you need a transition period. This transition phase from capitalism to communism is called lower tier communism, also popularly known as socialism. This occurs when a working class party takes control of a nation's economic, political, and judicial systems and dedicates them towards studying the existing material conditions, poverty, food insecurity, etc., and tackling the current contradictions that would stop them from being a stateless, moneyless, and classless society. A one-party system versus in America where you vote for 2 rival capitalist parties. During the socialist phase, money, class, and the state still exist, but the point is to gradually bring us to a post-abundance period. And once that point is met, the state ceases to be necessary. So we call things communist today in terms of their tendency rather than the results, as tendency is a more optimal way to grasp the validity of a communist path in a specific portion of the planet. This manifests in places like Cuba being blockaded by the largest capitalist superpower in the world and its partners, yet having a higher life expectancy than the United States, top-tier healthcare, great education, dental care, all those being a constitutional right. This manifests in places like Vietnam, having a 10-year war with that same capitalist superpower, rising from the devastation, but still uplifting their poor and having a developing economy that rivals members of the EU in less than 40 years. This manifests in China, a nation of 1.4 billion people, considered one of the poorest countries in the world 60 years ago, yet uplifting more people from poverty than any other human civilization in human history, and still having the #1 economy in the world in less time than it took the USA to free the slaves.
Right.
And in the past, the USSR went from peasants to space in 60 years and industrializing faster than any other nation. All these countries had a voter participation rate of 80%, universal healthcare, and each one of them are better from what they were before, with the exception of the USSR, as they allowed capitalists to have political power. Now, Russia and its former Soviet states are experiencing poverty rates they never had before. These aren't paradoxes. When you put production for human need rather than profit, multinational corporations overseas and at home don't have political power. To call yourself communist shows internationally your dedication to the economic, social, and political commitment to the deprived working class. That means Big Pharma does not have the ability to stop a healthcare bill. Oil tycoons can't raise gas prices. The military-industrial complex can't plunge your nation into endless war. If your landlord wants to raise rent, he has to go to court first. And having a union would be your constitutional right. It would be a workers' congress. Those are the rules of the dictatorship of the workers. Those are the rules of the dictatorship of the proletariat.
The workers.
AKA communism. That was a long one.
Right, so it's basically how you want to organize society. The right is capitalism. And you can kind of tell, like, the far right, the way they describe capitalism, all good, and the way they describe communism, all bad. The far left, capitalism, all bad, and communism, all good, kind of. But so, like you said, if the right says that the market, that money will organize stuff. The smart people will make stuff happen. They'll get more money. They'll bring more jobs, pay more people, rinse, repeat, right? Communists say that we want to look at the people first, like he said, look at what's needed, like housing, food, education, whatever you need, and then organize that. Just say what we got, put it out. Right now, we have more empty homes than we have homeless people in America. Like, we throw away enough food to feed the entire world in the U.S. And I don't know wherever city you're in, but if you're in the West, or at least in the U.S., if you walk around, drive around, you see empty buildings everywhere. There's all kinds of empty opportunities that people just don't have the money to be able to use. But if you didn't need money, you could just use the space and say, make art, work with kids, anything, have a bar, whatever, just use the space, even live there, whatever it was. But now we just close down all these spaces, and then here we move the homeless people around. You're sitting here too long, we move you over to the next park. You're sitting there too long, we move to the next park. In communism, the far left, we want open access to things. We think that these homeless people should have access to these empty homes. We don't think that BlackRock or that Donald Trump or anybody should own 15 homes or even probably like 5 homes. How many homes does one person need? If you have a huge family and you're buying homes for everybody in your family, that's different. But if you got 5 homes and they're like investment homes, you're buying properties in China and Hawaii and Malibu or something, and you don't ever go there, they're just for investment. Not cool, man. People need to live. But anyway, I don't want to get too long-winded. I thought this was a really good piece by Molombo showing capitalism and communism from all across the spectrum. Thought it matched this channel pretty well from the name. And until next time, you guys, stay learning.